from the National News Studio, Sri Lanka.
Good evening and welcome to the National News broadcast, bringing to you live from the National News Studios here at the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation. We are ready to bring you the top stories here at home and around the world. I am Charita Bilipurarachi, together with Duranjani Ananda. Another gas tanker to the country. Continuous gas supply ensured. Water level in reservoirs connected to power plants declines. A request to utilize electricity sparingly. Government urges all parties to cooperate for the way forward of the country amidst challenges. All-party conference is tomorrow. Prevention of Terrorism Temporary Provisions Amendment Bill passed in Parliament with a majority. Ukraine President requests Pope to mediate in ending the conflict. The Chinese government says no survivors from the crashed flight. And moving on to the local stories, these days we can experience long queues in front of the gas distribution outlets in many parts of the island. However, this shortage has caused severe disruption to the general public, and State Minister Lasantha Alagiyawanna said that he will ensure the continuity of gas supply in the country, and he made these remarks while engaging in an observational tour at the Litro Gas Filling Centre at Keravalapitia this morning.
The public faced severe difficulties in the last couple of days due to the prevailed gas shortage. Long queues were seen in front of gas distribution outlets in many parts of the country. Directing his attention over the prevailing situation, the President released the necessary funds required for the gas tankers anchored in the port. Accordingly, Litro Gas Company has said that more than 100,000 domestic gas cylinders were distributed to the market on a daily basis during the last couple of days. Meanwhile, transport drivers have claimed that interference of the gas distribution lotteries could be leading for issues. State Minister Lasantha Alagiyawanna said that the Litro Gas Company has guaranteed to the Consumer Affairs Authority that their products will be issued to the market in the next couple of days within a normalized manner. He further said that his observational tour was organized with the objective of to brief the public over the actual situation. Accordingly, he said that Epic Bolivia ship has arrived in the Sri Lankan shores, and officials of the Standards Institute as well as Petroleum Corporation have already boarded the ship. He said that 3,600 metric tons of gas have been brought through this ship. The ships are expected to arrive in the country today, Thursday, Saturday and next Monday. He said that people should not inflict fears over the potential gas shortage again. He further said that Love Gas Company ship has also arrived in the country.
Dulanjani, these days we experience a dry climate, and basically we know in Sri Lanka hydropower generation takes a prominent place, and due to the fuel crisis and many other circumstances we experience some power cuts, power failures rather, and like due to this dry climatic condition, so the hydropower generation is at a stance because the water levels of the basic main reservoirs have gone down. So you have an update on that?
Yes, we do. So if we have an ability to, switch off that extra light which is not needed, that might help us as well. So on the detail, existing low water levels in reservoirs connected to power plants have continued to affect the hydropower generation. Ministry of Power said that the dry climatic condition prevailing in the country has largely contributed for the low water levels in the reservoirs. Water level of Castle Reek Reservoir has declined up to 13.41 meters from spill levels. Accordingly, only 16.5% of units of power out of the 4 meters from the spill level, and only 16.3 power units out of the total capacity can be generated from the reservoir at present. The water level in Kutmale reservoir has reduced by 24.1 meters from the spill level, and only 22.1% of power units can be generated from the reservoir. Only 34.5 units of power can be generated from the existing water level in the Victoria reservoir at present, as the water level has reduced by 24.72 meters from the spill level. Meanwhile, water level of Randenigala reservoir has declined up to 8.48 meters from spill levels. Accordingly, only 56.3% of units of power out of the total capacity can be generated from the reservoir. Therefore, the Ministry of Power has requested the public to use electricity sparingly, as the priority should be given for drinking water and agricultural requirement in the country. Minister Gamini Lokuge said that the oil tanker with furnace oil will arrive in the country in the next 2 to 3 weeks. He said that the Petroleum Corporation consists of 20,000 tons of diesel at present. Also, he added that the corporation consists of 20,000 tons of kerosene and 15,000 tons of petrol. He further said that the kerosene, diesel and petrol required for all filling stations in Colombo have been distributed. He said that the oil tanker under the Indian Credit Loan Facility will arrive in the country either tomorrow or day after. He further said that usually around 7,000 tons of diesel and petrol are distributed on daily basis. However, he said that a shortage will prevail, even though 8,500 tons of fuel have been distributed at present. Minister Dr. Ramesh Patran said that required petrol quantities have already been distributed among all filling stations at present despite a diesel shortage. However, he said that certain filling stations are closed down at present, which has caused long queues in front of other filling stations. He added that many complaints have received over hoarding of fuel by an organized group of entities. Therefore, the minister added that the support of the security forces has to be restored to review the distribution process as well as to monitor the methodology on the gradual distribution of fuel entities. He said that this move was taken for the benefit of the people and not to violate any human rights.
And moving to more local stories, Co-Cabinet spokesman Minister Dr. Ramesh Patran urges that all stakeholders to extend their cooperation for the way forward of the country amidst the prevailing challenges. And the minister made these remarks while speaking at the media briefing held at the Department of Government Information today to announce the decisions of the Cabinet ministers. Co-Cabinet spokesman Minister Dr. Ramesh Patran said that many programs were initiated by the government to provide relief for the public in the face of COVID-19 outbreak during the last 2 years. He said the vaccination program was created out in an efficient manner. He pointed out the importance in utilizing all opportunities under the prevailing crisis climate with a positive framework. He said that the media has a great responsibility in this regard, and media should be responsible of the behavior, especially regarding tourists.
කරන්නට අවශ්‍ය මේ රටේ ඔබ දැක්ක ඊයේ විශේෂයෙන්ම පවතින තත්ත්වයන් යටතේ අර විදේශ සංචාරකින් පවා රැගෙන ආපු බස් රථ වට කරලා ඔවුන්ගේ ගමනාගමනයට බාධා කරලා විශාල උද්ඝෝෂණ කරනවා. ඉතින් මේ හරහා සංචාරක ව්‍යාපාරයෙන් යැපෙන ලක්ෂ සංඛ්‍යාත පිරිසක් මේ රටේ ඉන්නවා. සංචාරකින්ට මේ රට දැන් එපා කරන මට්ටමටම මාධ්‍ය භාවිතාවන් සමහරක් වෙලාවට දුරදිග ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා. ඒක ඉතාලම කනගාටුදායක තත්ත්වයක්. ඉතින් මේ රට හැටියට අපි රාජ්‍යයන් හැමදාම බලේ ඉන්නේ නැහැ. අපි දේශපාලකින් එනවා යනවා. ඔබ දන්නවා ඒක වසර 5ක කාලයක් 10ක කාලයක් තමයි බලේ ඉන්නේ. මේ රටක් හැටියට අපි සෑම කෙනෙකුම මේ රටේ ජීවත් වෙන්න අවශ්‍යයි.
The minister also made remarks over the protests as well. Minister Dr. Ramesh Patran said that no government has faced such protests and opposed many occasions in recent times. However, he said that the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has given freedom for those entities to express freely. He added that even though protesters attempted to enter the presidential secretariat, the officials of the security divisions responded in a non-aggressive manner. However, he said that certain entities waiting for the government to inflict harm on such protesters.
The government convened all-party conference set to begin at the Presidential Secretariat tomorrow. The all-party conference has been organized with the aim to find solutions for the prevailing situation in the country. The country's first ever all-party conference in Sri Lanka was convened in 1983 under the patronage of former President late J.R. Jayawardena. The all-party conference was held based on the riots and terrorism issue in 1983. Subsequently, many all-party conferences were convened for various crises occurred in the country. Several political parties in the country requested the government to convene an all-party conference with the aim to find solutions for the present situation in the country. Accordingly, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa convened the relevant all-party conference. The objective of this conference is to obtain views and suggestions on the future steps to be taken in the face of the prevailing crisis situation in the country. Deputy Chairman of the United National Party, Akhila Viraj Karyavasam, said that the party has reached a decision to take part in the conference. He said that the party would assist any mechanism to provide solutions for these issues pertaining to the people. However, Samaga Jana Balawegaya has declined to take part in the proposed all-party conference. Directing a letter, Secretary to the opposition leader Ravi Jayawardena had informed Secretary to the President Gamini Senarath over the decision reached by the party. Tamil National Alliance has agreed to take part in the all-party conference. Parliamentarian M.A. Sumantharan officially informed in this regard today. Meanwhile, National People's Power officially declined to participate in the all-party conference yesterday. Venerable Athuraliye Ratanathera and Professor Tissa Vitharana have decided to take part in the conference representing the government-affiliated parties. Leader of the Sri Lanka Mahajana Party, Parliamentarian Asanka Navaratne, confirming the participation for the conference, said that all should take part in the conference despite party differences. Minister Mahinda Amaravira confirmed the participation of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party for the all-party conference. He pointed out that the present requirement for all political parties to rally together and extend their cooperation for the way forward of the country.
And meanwhile, the Supreme Court has informed the Speaker that the surcharge tax bill is consistent with the Constitution. The determination of the Supreme Court indicates that the relevant draft bill can be passed in the Parliament with a simple majority. Remarks were also shared over the report presented by the International Monetary Board regarding Sri Lanka. MP Ranil Wickremesinghe said that it was promised to table the IMF report to the Parliament on several occasions. He said that the President has convened the parliamentarian for meeting tomorrow, yet the Finance Ministry has failed to present this report to the Parliament. He added that this is a violation of privileges. Accordingly, he inquired how to take part in this meeting tomorrow without having any knowledge of the economic situation in the country. State Minister Shehan Semasinghe said that the government has agreed to table the IMF report to the Parliament upon publication. However, he said that the Finance Ministry is yet to receive the official report.
Prevention of Terrorism Temporary Provisions Amendment Bill passed in the Parliament with a majority of 51 votes. 86 votes were in favour of the draft bill, while 35 votes against it. Minister Professor G.R. Peiris presented the relevant draft bill to the Parliament.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is with a sense of satisfaction that I present to this House a series of amendments to the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is an old act. It is 43 years old. Now, during that period, there is no question that circumstances in this country, our priorities, our objectives, have undergone a fundamental change. It is therefore necessary to revisit the provisions of the Prevention of Terrorism Act number 48 of 1979 and to examine the changes that are now opportune in light of the basic social transformations that have taken place in our country during a period of almost half a century. Now, I want to make it very clear, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this is an initial step. The government is engaged in a comprehensive review of security legislation in our country. These amendments are being brought within the framework of existing legislation. But we are now preparing comprehensive legislation. Obviously, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is going to take some time. And this is being done with the active assistance and inputs by various other institutions of the government.
Firstly, since you are all regarding the criticizing the PTA, I put my hand up and say I'm one of those who drafted it. It was abused later. But if we didn't have that legislation, you may not have fought this war. When we first had it, we had the LTET, we had a lot of terrorism. Our members, mainly of the TULF, were getting killed, and we brought this proscription of the liberation Tamil Tigers of Elam. But that law was not sufficient because they could say that we didn't belong to the LTT. We had to find a new law. And I was one of them. I was Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. We looked at it and we looked at actually selected the Northern Ireland, the instance of terrorism in Northern Ireland, which was quite similar to what we had in Sri Lanka, and we brought in the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Listening to the honourable members of the opposition, I am wondering whether we are actually debating the 1978 original act or the amendment. The manner in which criticism had been levelled against us, as if we are bringing in a new law for the first time to introduce PTA. We are not doing that. We are introducing safeguards in order to address some of the long-standing issues which we have identified over a long period of time, which need rectification. So instead of applauding that, instead of at least saying that there is something progressive happening, you just want to bring it to note. What's the point? Let's assume that you are saying that you will not vote for it. So let's assume that this vote is not get passed. What happens? PTA remains as such, as it is now. Is that what you want? I think we have over a period of time had so divided in this house. No one can see what is positive or negative other than your party affiliation and political ambitions.
Inauguration ceremony of the academic programs in international relations of the Bandaranaike Centre for International Studies was held yesterday at the BMICH. High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle graced the event as the chief guest. He addressed the gathering on India-Sri Lanka bilateral relations, challenges and opportunities. Approximately 150 students who enrolled for the certificate, diploma, high diploma and postgraduate diploma programs in international relations participated at this event.
We are just not brothers and sisters. We have shared the same womb. We are civilizational twins. And this is the basis why my government's policy, in its policy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, neighborhood comes first, and in neighborhood, Sri Lanka is central. Because the type of civilizational commonality we have with Sri Lanka, the type of similarities we have with Sri Lanka, as democracies, as plural countries, it is difficult for me to find anywhere else in the world. What are the challenges and opportunities for India and Sri Lanka? Basically, I believe every challenge is an opportunity. That's the first point. You have to believe. And young minds, youthful people, full of energy, full of vigor, whose future is ahead of them, they indeed have to regard every challenge as opportunity. And they do, I know that. In my country they do, in Sri Lanka they do. But we are talking here about challenges not in our individual life, but in our lives as nations. Our effort essentially is that whatever we can do as a friend and a close neighbor of India, it should help the people of Sri Lanka in terms of the supply of essential items, whether it is fuel or food or medicine, and we are trying to do it as quickly as we can. The Honorable Finance Minister of Sri Lanka recently visited India. There were good outcomes out of it. But as you all understand, these are the measures which are required right now. What about future? It has been our belief, and this is a very important part of our conversation with the government of Sri Lanka and our cooperation, that ultimately it is investment coming into Sri Lanka which will create jobs. Ultimately it is investment coming into Sri Lanka which will create capacities and make Sri Lanka once again after COVID, once again make it recover economically faster. So with Sri Lanka also, suppose in the future you develop your solar and renewable energy resources. Sri Lanka is not a very big country, it's an island. Any surplus you can export to India. So the amount of money that is being spent now on importing fuel, actually it can be reversed. You can start earning.
And now we momently deviate to the headline which is taking the global attention, still the invasion of Russia into Ukraine. Now 10 million people have fled Ukraine homes, and President Putin reaches out on a telephone conversation to the Turkish president, and we see the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, reaching out to and appealing to Israel. But still, they are willing to have negotiations, but we don't see any progress.
Yes, exactly. And the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, has even reached out for the Pope Francis, even to have some sort of a mediation, and we have an update over that.
On that, yes. So the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an end to the absurd war in Ukraine, warning that the conflict is going nowhere fast and that the Ukrainian people are enduring a living hell. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he has spoken to Pope Francis and suggested the Vatican could mediate between Kyiv and Moscow. Fierce battles are raging in Ukraine as Russian forces are struggling to push ahead many areas, including suburbs of capital Kyiv, amidst stiff resistance from Ukrainian forces. Ukraine's defense ministry says its forces have retaken control of Markiv and a strategically important suburb west of Kyiv after a fierce battle with Russian troops. The regained territory allowed Ukrainian forces to assume command of a key highway and block Russian troops from surrounding the capital from the northwest, it added.
And meanwhile, under the Secretary for Political Affairs of the U.S. Department of State, Victoria Nuland, commenced her two-day official visit today. During the visit, Under Secretary Nuland is scheduled to call on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Minister Professor G.L. Pires. And moving on to the other stories, all development activities related to Kanugahaweva village in Kapitikolava initiated under a discussion with a village project series implemented under a concept of the president have been completed. The deployment activities were carried out by the Sri Lanka Air Force. The discussion with a village program related to Kanugahaweva village in Kapitikolava was held on December 30, 2020. The residents of the area requested the president to construct housing units for low income as well as to renovate community centers. The development program was initiated under the guidance of Sri Lanka Air Force Commander Air Marshal Sudarshana Patruna, marking the 70th anniversary of Sri Lanka Air Force. More than 900 residents belonging to 314 families are currently residing in this village. Housing units equipped with electricity and water supply facilities for 25 families with economic difficulties were constructed under the complete assistance from Sri Lanka Air Force. The constructions of the Bodhi Prakare, Pagoda Dhamma School building and bell tower at the Abhinavarama Vihare in Kanugahaweva. The housing units constructed under the first phase were vested with the public on April 4th last year by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. New office building, teachers' quarters and school building were constructed at the Kanugahaweva Primary School. Initiating a water supply project for the village, a new water tank has already been constructed while laying water pipes as is currently underway. Constructions under the second phase handing over the deeds to houses were carried out with the participation of Minister Namal Rajapaksa. Reaping harvest of the cultivated paddy fields in the Kanugahaweva village was also carried out with the assistance of Sri Lanka Air Force. Steps were taken to reap the harvest using machinery belonging to the Air Force on free of charge, considering the high rates on such machines.
Now, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal to appoint a ministerial committee on investment promotion. The proposal was presented by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
The objective of the committee is to direct the attention over the pioneer sectors at national level for the accomplishment of government's development targets. The committee will provide required policy and practical solutions for recognizing and promoting investment opportunities in the relevant sectors. The committee is comprised of the Prime Minister and relevant ministers along with state ministries. An officials committee comprised of the secretaries of the relevant ministries and state ministries and other relevant officers headed by the Secretary to the President has also been appointed in order to assist the above ministers committee. India has agreed to provide a grant of $6 million for the establishment of a maritime rescue coordinating center in Sri Lanka. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by the President to sign a memorandum of understanding between the two countries. India has agreed to provide a grant of 300 million Indian rupees to implement the Unified Digital Identity Framework in Sri Lanka. The proposed memorandum of understanding between the two countries is expected to be signed to obtain the said grants. The relevant proposal was furnished by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal to implement a rental ownership scheme for those who rented houses and living under deprived facilities. The State Ministry of Rural Housing, Construction and Building Materials Industrial Promotion expected to commence the project. It is proposed to construct a 4-storied housing complexes under the project and 9 housing complexes consisting of 464 houses under the first phase. The proposed project is designed to recover a monthly rent of 15,000 rupees over a period of 31 years. The relevant proposal was presented by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Cabinet of Ministers has been granted to sign a bilateral aviation agreement between Sri Lanka and Netherlands. The proposed agreement, furnished by Minister Prasanna Ranatunga, expected to be signed with the objective of further enhancing the relationship between the two countries on aviation sector activities. India has agreed to assist in the development of fishery harbours at mutually selected locations. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal presented by Minister Douglas Devananda to enter to a Memorandum of Understanding between Sri Lanka and India for the assistance in the development project.
Today is the World Water Day, and this year's theme is underwater, making the invisible visible. World Water Day is an annual United Nations Observance Day held on every March on the 22nd day that highlights the importance of fresh water and water resources. The day is used to advocate for the sustainable management of water resources. The global agency issued a report on the issues including water scarcity, water pollution, inadequate water supply, lack of sanitation, and the impacts of climate change. UN Water mobilizes organization of all kinds to action, whether globally or locally. During last year, 140 countries organized various programs with 6,000 participants in line with World Water Day. This year's Water Day is focused on the freshness of the groundwater. The World Water Day celebrations in Sri Lanka were held in Colombo this evening under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Meanwhile, the head of the United Nations warned that the world is sleepwalking to climate catastrophe as the ongoing pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the lack of political willpower undermine the humanity's efforts to slow the warming of the planet. Addressing the Economist Sustainability Summit yesterday, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the most ambitious goal of the 2015 Paris Accord to limit Earth's warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels is slipping away.
There is no kind way to put it. The 1.5 degree goal is on life support, it is in intensive care. The science is clear, so is the math. Keeping 1.5 alive requires a 45% reduction in global emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality by mid-century. That problem was not solved in Glasgow. In fact, the problem is getting worse. Public finance side, wealthier countries must finally make good on the 100 billion climate finance commitment in 2022 to developing countries. International financial institutions must give greater priority to climate action. On blended finance, those institutions must partner with private finance for joint investments or give guarantees that will attract much greater volumes of private investment. More creative risk-taking and innovation is needed to unlock the trillions the transition desperately needs. On the private side, we need to see far more investment in the net zero and climate resilient transition of emerging economies. It is the right thing to do and the profitable thing to do. So how do we keep 1.5 alive? By accelerating the phase-out of coal and all fossil fuels and implementing a rapid, just and sustainable energy transition, the only true pathway to energy security. By honouring the Glasgow Pledge to strengthen national climate plans every year until they are aligned with 1.5 degrees. By delivering concrete outcomes this year on climate coalitions to help emerging economies urgently phase out coal. By driving a swift and transformative increase in climate finance with multilateral development banks leading on unlocking the trillions that we know are needed. By speeding up the decarbonisation of major sectors such as shipping, aviation, steel and cement. And by protecting the most vulnerable and ensuring an equal focus on adaptation. That's how we will move the 1.5 degree goal from life support to the recovery room.
Now, Deputy Director General of Health Services Dr. Hemant Herat says that the transmissions of coronavirus may increase as a result of the frequent public movement during the New Year period. He said that all should receive their vaccinations and adhere to health guidelines to reduce further outbreaks. He made these remarks while speaking to media today.
At present, the total number of COVID-19 patients reported daily in Sri Lanka has gone below 300 level. This time also, with the expected human behavior, social and economic activities that are going to happen during the festival season. Therefore, it is natural and expected to have another surge of disease even after the new year, however mild, for which we have to get the fullest cooperation from all citizens of the country, where we expect everyone to adhere to the health guidelines during the festival season, and also to ensure that they are getting their appropriate immunization or vaccine dose, so that the risk of getting infected and getting complications will be minimized. Many countries which has successfully controlled the disease in the past are now experiencing new outbreaks, and even Sri Lanka is the same, where we have relatively controlled the disease compared to few months back. However, still the epidemic is continuing. There are certain time period where even the PCR test will not become positive, and therefore when the large number of people are coming into the country, they can bring the disease.
Moving to more local stories and the update about the Radio Awards. The State Radio Awards ceremony 2022 was held at the Elphinstone Theatre in Maradana yesterday. The event was held with the participation of State Minister Vidura Vikramanayake. The best in the field of radio broadcasting in Sinhala, Tamil and English mediums were felicitated during the ceremony. More than 1,500 applicants representing 21 radio channels were submitted for the State Award ceremony. Awards were presented under various categories including Best Newsreader, Best News Editor, Best Sports Program, Best Radio Drama and Best Radio Drama as Tasty. Veteran artist Natali Nanayakar received the Veteran Artist Kusum Paris Memorial Award. Broadcasting veteran Sean Vikramasinghe, Newton Guratna, Sumana Tilaka, Nadaraja Ayya, Shirley William and D.S. Dayaratna received the Lifetime Achievement Award. Director of Cultural Affairs Department Taranjiri Anomaya Gamage, Chairman of State Broadcasting Advisory Board Silaratna Senarath were present at this occasion. And after this short commercial break, we are moving to more international news.
Prima Stella Set Yogurt. Be healthy, be active and be safe.
வெளிநாட்டில் உழைக்கும் பணத்தை மக்கள் வங்கியின் பீப்பிள்ஸ் ரெமிட்டன்ஸ் ஊடாக இலங்கைக்கு அனுப்பி கோடி அதிர்ஷ்ட சீட்டிலிப்பில் பரிசினை வென்ற பிப்ரவரி மாத வெற்றியாளர்கள் இதோ. நாளாந்தம் 10,000 வீதம் வென்ற வெற்றியாளர்கள், வாராந்தம் தங்க பவுன் வென்ற வெற்றியாளர்கள், பிப்ரவரி மாத மில்லியனர். உங்கள் அன்புக்குரியவர்கள் வெளிநாட்டிலிருந்து எந்த முறையில் பணம் அனுப்பினாலும் அனுப்புவது மக்கள் வங்கியின் மூலமாக எனில் நன்மைகள் கூடும்.
And welcome back with international news, and we are focusing on certain important events that took place in the international arena through our international news segment. So today the first update is about the South China plane crash, and 132 passengers were on board while the plane was nosediving 30,000 feet to somewhere on hills in China South. So creating a grievances to the Chinese families, for the families of the people who were on board. No survivors was rescued with the rescue missions.
Recovery work has been hampered by difficult terrain. Hundreds of responders have been sent to the crash site in Washu to scour the steeply forested slopes where debris from the crash was strewn. Rescuers have so far found parts of this 737's wreckage. State broadcasters showed images of charred remains of letters, bags, wallets and identity cards belonging to those on board. The China Eastern Airline flight from Kunming and the capital of Yunnan had been due to a land in Guangzhou on Monday afternoon. The flight had been in air for over an hour and was nearing its destination.
And moving to the sports update, we have the update of the Avent Super Cup basketball tournament, and there were several matches played yesterday from Group A and B in the Sugatadasa Indoor Stadium, Colombo, and the Royal College Basketball Indoor Stadium.
The first match of the A group was held between Trackmasters and Women's Air Force team. The Air Force team was able to win the match by 60 points to 50. Colombo BC won the match played against Navy SC by 77 points to 71. Avent BC teams was able to clinch the victory against Sri Lanka Army. Accordingly, Avent BC won the match by 93 points to 55. The first match in the B group was played between Contenders and Penguins. Accordingly, Penguin BC won the match by 58 to 39 points. Cages won the match played against Nets by BC by 81 points to 51. RBC and OWSC competed each other in B group, and RBC won the match by 86 points to 31.
And moving for more sports stories, Sri Lanka Air Force Chamin Dapiri secured the Mr. Sri Lanka title 2022.
185 competitors took part in the tournament. Chamin Dapiri from Sri Lanka Air Force won the championship, while Sri Lanka Army's P.T. Rajapaksa was named runners-up. M.M. Namaratna from Sri Lanka Navy placed third in the tournament. Shalini Raigambandara won the championship of the women's category. The tournament was organized by Bodybuilding Organization and Physical Fitness Federation.
And with that, we conclude tonight's news. Join us tomorrow at the very same time. Stay safe. Good night.